Good morning, LTown. Today is Sunday, April 26th. We are about to start week 7 of remote learning and social distancing. And I believe at this point, most of us have figured out how to feed ourselves and how to find toilet paper and how to manage some of the changes in our lives. And we're starting to find some kind of routine, but we're experiencing in a heightened way that feeling that we often have, that anxiety, that butterflies in our stomach. I think it feels different for everybody. Um, and we thought it might be the right time to bring on a professional who could help talk us through some of these feelings. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this morning. I hope everyone at home is doing as well as they can, and I hope everyone is healthy and well. And I also want to start by saying that I know all of us are having very different experiences. Some of us have never been some of us are very overwhelmed. Some of us are struggling with a lot of different problems. Some of us are alone. Some of us have lots of people in our house. So everyone's having very unique experiences. And so this is just a general conversation about what is, I think, going on with a lot of us, which is this feeling of anxiety, being alone with our thoughts, and learning how to manage them. So I want to introduce to all of us today Dr. Julia Turovsky, who is, hi, Julia.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us today. Julia, you're a clinical psychologist who specializes in the assessment and treatment of anxiety and related disorders. And you have a private practice in Chatham, New Jersey, right? And you're going to be here today to discuss with us what we're feeling, what it is that is going on in our bodies and our brains, and sort of help manage some of those symptoms and what we should be looking for, what's normal, what's not normal, right? And you are a former associate director of the Rutgers Anxiety Disorder Clinic, and you've spent over 20 years treating anxiety and supervising graduate students and guest lecturing on topics related to worry, panic, trauma, and OCD. So I'm sure you're seeing a lot of heightened of what you normally see. And before we begin, I just wanted to thank Robert Allen and Holly Ehrlich of New Media Connection, who are producing this event for us tonight. They are devoted residents of Livingston and have always been there for us whenever we need them to step in. And since this situation has begun, they have made themselves available and shared their professional resources to make these programs possible. Thank you to the both of you. Okay, so I just want to start by having you explain to us, what is this feeling that we're experiencing? And I know it's called anxiety, or some people call it panic, but what is actually going on in our bodies and our brains? What are some of the physical and cognitive symptoms? And what is normal and what is not normal?
Right. So I think we're actually experiencing a mix of symptoms or a mix of emotions, and all of them are really valid and important. So we are feeling anxiety, we are feeling fear, we're feeling panic, and many of us are feeling other emotions like grief, sadness, disappointment, gratitude, guilt, kind of a really strong mix. The good news and the bad news is that anxiety is really normal and really healthy and essential to our functioning. So fear and anxiety are part of our very primitive defense and protective systems. So we have a fear system and we have a pain system, and both of those systems are aimed at protecting us against danger. They come from a very deep center of our brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is very deep. It's part of our reptilian brain, and it is meant to protect us from danger. Originally, it was protecting us from saber-toothed tigers or reptile snakes or other invaders, and now it's protecting us from our fear of COVID-19. So the reaction is completely real and normal and healthy, and it would be impossible not to experience some degree of fear and anxiety. It might be useful to distinguish the difference between fear and anxiety. So anxiety is anticipating and preparing for imminent danger, worrying about getting COVID, making sure we're protecting ourselves, making sure we're staying indoors, washing our hands, not engaging in behaviors that we don't need to. Fear is when the danger is imminent. So anxiety is worrying that someone's going to break into your house, and fear is what to do when the intruder is actually there. Anxiety and fear have a variety of components. There are physical components, cognitive components, and behavioral components. So what are the physical components? So what happens in our brain is that our brain starts to secrete really important chemicals and hormones to get us ready and prepare us for danger. So what happens when we feel anxious? We secrete some cortisol, we may secrete some adrenaline, and we may secrete some noradrenaline. So all those things energize our body and prepare us for danger. What can that do? That can increase our heart rate. It can increase our respiration. It can make us a little shaky. It can make us feel a little jumpy. It can make us feel a little nauseous, because if you're really nervous and scared, digestion shuts down because your body's preparing for threat and preparing to fight a predator. Our muscles get really tight because, again, we're bracing for an attack or preparing ourselves. Our ability to concentrate on regular tasks is diminished. That makes a lot of sense, because if there's a predator or you're in danger, it makes sense to focus on the outside threat instead of the inside threat. So that can feel really difficult. So if you're working on a project, or you're doing work, or you're helping your children, but something came out of the corner of your mind on the news and people are getting strokes and blood clots who are young, you're going to have this anxious response, and it makes sense for your brain to go, shoot, I need to focus on that, and I need to zoom in on that danger. So cognitively, our attention is not distorted. We're not losing our attention. Our attention shifts from the thing that we're doing to the thing that's dangerous. So that makes a lot of sense. It just becomes really complicated. These neurochemicals are also exhausting. Really Sorry?
Right. No, and I can imagine it's overwhelming when you're trying to manage working from home, which is unique, educating your kids, which is a whole new experience, right, managing things in your house you may not be managing, and also all the added stresses of your body functioning or your brain functioning a little bit more differently than it normal does. That's really overwhelming.
Absolutely. And the chemicals in our body, while they're meant to be adaptive, they're meant to be useful in a short-term fashion to kind of get you ready and prepare you for danger, or prepare you to give a talk, or prepare you to, run a marathon. There's this kind of little boost that we have. But when the symptoms are chronic and we're chronically secreting cortisol and we're marinating in this cortisol, it becomes exhausting and draining. And so we're chronically aroused and hyper aroused, but we're not fighting. We're not in a battle. We're not out there on the front lines. Most of, those of us that are home. And so we are marinating in these chemicals that are exhausting us. Our attention is pulled away from our families, our children, and our work, and onto this danger. And then we just kind of feel cloudy and exhausted. And behaviorally, it can make us really jittery. So you feel like you need to be doing something all the time. So you feel like you want to be you want to be up, because again, you have all this adrenaline. So you're trying to prepare for danger. So this energy is kind of, floating in our body. So we're jumping around, we're trying to do stuff. And I think many people describe simultaneously feeling overstimulated, energized, and at the same time exhausted.
Right. That's what we're all feeling like. Energy that when it's normal,
So we just lost Neeli's connection for just a moment. So I'll jump in to kind of keep things going along. It's interesting as I'm listening to what you're saying. You wonder about normalcy, right? Like where does that line, right? Because normal now is going to be reset.
Normal is there's a new normal, right?
Yeah. So how do we, first of all, like when things start to get back to what we are hoping is normal and we find that it's not normal, it's different, right? That, one of the things that, I've been doing all the shopping, and I'm the one that's going out and seeing the world and going in to a supermarket and seeing it in a way that we've never seen it before. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's pretty, I'm anxious, and it's like, I used to enjoy going to the supermarket. Now I find it very anxious getting out of the car, putting the mask on, the whole thing. And you wonder if it'll ever get back to the way it felt before.
Eventually, but I think, they think there'll be a new normal. One of the things that I used to compare the beginning of this epidemic to was my experience after 9/11. We kind of lost our normal. We didn't feel so safe. We didn't feel so protected from danger. And the new normal at the airports has permanently changed. Security has changed. So I do think there'll be a different normal in the way that we conduct business, especially in a grocery store. But how we're feeling will eventually, I think, settle down. One of the things Neeli and I were talking about is the difference between normal and healthy anxiety during COVID-19 and what would be considered clinical anxiety in my book, or a point at which you might want to seek help. So if your anxiety is high, that is very normal and healthy. And if you're battling that anxiety a good chunk of the day, that is also normal and healthy. However, the anxiety should ebb and flow. You should have periods when you feel really lousy and uncomfortable and kind of shaky and stressed. And then there should be a little relief or a break from that anxiety. You should be able to have a couple of hours during the day where you feel almost normal. Your appetite, your sleep, your energy level, while mildly effective, should still allow you to kind of function comfortably, or function in general. So I begin to worry when folks say to me that they are feeling anxious all of their waking time, when they're always feeling really nervous and shaky, when they're nauseous, when they can't eat, when they are in a terrible mood, when it's hard to swallow, when it's hard to sleep, when it's hard to pay attention to your children or do your job. So when the anxiety spills over from episodic, like when you're watching the news or when you hear that a friend is sick, to chronic, as in you're feeling crappy all the time and you're always nervous and distracted and you really can't do activities of daily living or basic tasks, that's when it's time to seek help. And I want to highlight that help is absolutely available. When I talk to my physician friends, it seems like a lot of patients are avoiding doctors and hospitals because we're all afraid of going to the hospital and being exposed to COVID. I want to let folks know that telemedicine and telehealth is alive and well. And there are lots of folks like me, psychologists, social workers, therapists, and psychiatrists who are all available. We're all working and we're all really busy and we're all here to help. So if you or someone you love is feeling not just normal anxiety, but anxiety that is interfering in your ability to function, that is a really important time to seek help. So if you notice that in somebody you care about, that might be a useful suggestion.
So we were talking about the fluctuations in mood throughout the day. And, I hear that from my friends when I say, how you doing? They go, right now, I'm okay, or I'm not having a good moment right now.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that we can do? First of all, how do we predict when we're about to reach that place where we can't pull ourselves back? What are some physical things we should be looking for? And what do we do right before we get to the point where we are really spiraling? How do we help ourselves not reach that point where we're in trouble? Throughout the day.
So hopefully for most of us, the anxiety ebbs and flows, and there'll be times where we're feeling better and times we're feeling worse. And I think that if you are a relatively healthy person and you're in a relatively safe environment, your anxiety will naturally fluctuate and you don't have to do much about it. But the things that we can do when it's building is recognize or actually pay attention to what you might be doing to actually exacerbate your own anxiety. So here's what I'm seeing or hearing from patients about what they might be engaging in that could bring them to that point or that brink. So the number one lousy thing to be doing is to be watching the news all day long, to be reading articles about COVID and who's getting sick, and to be texting and talking with everybody you know about what you're worried about and all the terrible things that are going on in my mind. Because then you're kind of flashing to your amygdala that the saber-toothed tiger is right there and it's about to eat you. So the danger is kind of constantly there, and you're looking at it and facing it and looking at it and facing it. And so it is impossible to regain composure. So the number one thing I would say for people to do is to really limit their exposure to the news. I'm sure you're seeing that all over the internet, and I'm sure you're hearing that from a lot of mental health professionals. Limit your exposure to the news and do not watch the news at night. So that is one really important thing to do. The other really important thing to do, and again, I'm not reinventing the wheel because I think all of us are saying the same thing, is try to get some kind of exercise. And I will explain why. When we are stressed and anxious and are experiencing fear, so that panic attack that people are having, that's no longer anxiety, that's fear. That's the sense of like, oh my God, the danger is imminent. We secrete all this cortisol and adrenaline, and then it's metabolizing in our body very slowly, and it's marinating, and we're sitting around feeling terrible. When you exercise and engage in, most importantly, cardiovascular activity, if you can stand it for a half hour, 45 minutes at a moderate rate, so you kind of want to get a little sweaty and a little out of breath, but you don't have to, you don't have to do a, really hardcore workout. You actually sweat and metabolize and excrete that cortisol that your amygdala and your body just dumped out. So that's why exercise is super important. The other thing to do is to practice gently shifting your attention from dangerous information to neutral information, to kind of really focus on the things at hand and whatever it is that you're doing. That is kind of the basic of mindfulness. So if you are washing the dishes, you want to focus on how warm the water is. How sudsy it is, how good it feels, the squeaky sound that it makes. Focus on something your child is saying. Focus on a scent, light a candle, ground yourself in the present. Have some sense of routine, and a loose routine, so gentle organization. Have a couple of accomplishments. And one of the things that's really important is to allow yourself to experience whatever intense emotion has just flooded you. So if we really let ourselves feel our emotions, not avoid them, not run away from them, not panic about them. If you say, holy cow, I feel really, really scared, or I feel really, really scared, sad, I feel sad about all the stuff that my kids are missing, or I feel really, really guilty. If we allow ourselves to feel the emotions without doing anything about them, I promise you, interestingly, they will only last 1 or 2 minutes if you really, really, really embrace them and marinate them. Neeli, are you with us?
I'm with you. I'm sort of with you, and I apologize. I'm now hunkered down,
That's okay,
hole in my house, and this is certainly contributing to my anxiety. And I caught most of what you're saying, and I heard you speaking a little bit about radical acceptance, which is something that I've been talking to people about for a long time, which is to accept the circumstances as you find them, to accept your emotional temperature as you find it, and just just sort of, I look like I'm hiding, just to sort of not judge what you're finding, but be in the quiet of that moment and then let it pass, sort of like not fighting a tidal wave, swimming with it and letting it pass over you. Is that sort of what you're talking about?
Absolutely. So there's this interesting relationship, and there's this really beautiful research on the fact that how we experience our emotions has a lot to do with how we judge them and whether we react to them or not. So if we truly allow ourselves to feel an emotion and not rationalize it and not run away from it and not fear it and not worry that it's going to overtake us and not judge it, the emotion will actually wash through us and then release us. But if we start, a lot of people feel guilty about having emotions. So one of the things that I'm hearing a lot, and I'm hearing it a lot from my adolescent and young adult patients, is that they have a lot of grief and regret. They feel lousy that they've lost their proms, their graduations, their abroad trips, all those beautiful things they planned. And then they instantly feel terribly guilty about having that emotion, because they say, well, how can I be feeling crappy about that? There are people dying. There are people on ventilators. There are people that don't have jobs. I'm so privileged. Like, I shouldn't be feeling those things. And as soon as you say to yourself that you shouldn't be feeling something, guess what happens to that emotion? The emotion intensifies and you feel worse. So saying, why am I anxious? I'm safe. I'm in my house. Why do I feel nervous? Why did I have a panic attack? Why can't I get things done? I'm lucky. Everything is fine. My family is healthy. I got an Instacart order and they showed up and I have avocados. Like, why should I be feeling anything but gratitude? Those judgments actually make our emotions worse, and they can drive us crazy, and they can make us feel more panicky, because now you're feeling nervous about the fact that you're feeling nervous. So you've layered a negative emotion on top of an already difficult emotion. So my advice is don't layer, absorb and allow yourself to have that feeling, and give yourself permission to feel whatever it is that you're feeling. You're allowed to feel scared poopless, or disappointment, or grieve the fact that you lost your study abroad program. It's okay. If you judge it and you panic about it and you say, why am I feeling so nervous? I have nothing to feel nervous about. Everybody's healthy. I just went on a walk. My kids are doing their homework. Why do I feel nervous? You're actually going to feel more nervous, because now you feel nervous that you're feeling kind of crazy about feeling nervous. So I would say the number one advice, as you pointed out, Neeli, is to radically accept. Means you fully embrace it and you accept it in your heart and in your body, and in the fact that you just made a really bad soup because you dumped too much salt, because you weren't thinking, because you were worrying about those blood clots that people are having.
I mean, I'm finding that I'm throughout the day trying to take joy in like simple things that I normally don't have time to do or don't need to do. And, sitting there washing the floors, which is something I've learned to do.
Excellent.
It took a long time, but I figured it out. Just being mindful in the moment and the repetitive nature of it, and rather than resenting the fact that I'm doing things that I'm not used to doing, but just being mindful and present and trying to enjoy the moment of it. I found it helpful to me in my day to day. And the other day I was like ironing and I was watching TV while doing it and watching something I had saved to watch and just enjoying the process. And I can't believe I said it. It was actually like fun a little bit. And that's been helpful in trying not to resent or be bitter or upset about the circumstances I find myself in, but trying to find simple joys in the little things that I'm doing.
I think that's super useful. And you said something else that's really, really important. And I want to kind of encourage our listeners to think about that as well, which is that you have to go slow, because we're all a little slower in our ability to do things than usual, because we only have a certain amount of bandwidth. You're struggling with a little bandwidth today on the router or the computer. But we all understand bandwidth, but psychologically we have limited bandwidth. And if we accept the fact that maybe 50% of our attention is being sucked up by the pandemic, by the fact that we're worried, by the fact that we're facing uncertainty, we only have 50% left to attend to our daily tasks. And everything is harder and everything is slower. And I think you're talking about being able to maybe enjoy the lower speed, take an advantage of the lower speed, and find some simple pleasure and some peace in the fact that whatever it is you're doing isn't thinking about COVID, and that if you do it slowly and you focus on it, you can get some benefit on it, and maybe even a simple pleasure.
Now, I talked about this briefly. We're all having very different experiences. Some of us are completely alone. Some of us have homes filled with people. Some of us have a lot of responsibility. Some of us have none. I don't know which is easier, to be honest. But what can people who are home without as much distraction be doing to fill their day? Because I imagine the quiet is what really makes it hard for some people.
Yeah, yeah. And people talk about, I think, this pandemic brings a paradox of experiences and emotions, and people are simultaneously exhausted and really bored, or overstimulated and understimulated, and wanting stimulation and wanting to socialize, but then feeling too exhausted to socialize. So I think that the folks who don't have a lot of kids at home or aren't working full time, I think creating a loose and flexible structure and coming up with a gentle agenda that's kind of not too lofty, and mapping out a couple of things that they could do in a day. And it could be something as simple as organizing a closet, or reading a chapter in a book, or taking a walk, or finding a podcast, not even looking for a podcast, and making a little casual to-do list, and then crossing those things off the list. I think that I actually think that would be useful for all of us, creating some semblance of a structure while respecting the fact that we are limited our ability to execute that structure. But having a couple of things to do, include reaching out to some friends and family, but also give yourself permission if you're too tired to then execute that goal. I started in the morning thinking about all the people I want to FaceTime and text and Zoom with. And then by 6 or 7 o'clock, those ideas kind of feel daunting and I feel exhausted. So I think you want to have a combination of a plan, and you want to have permission to not execute that plan.
So a loose and kind of
convenient
to-do list, so that at the end of the day, you can identify 1 or 2 things you accomplished. And this is not the time to like learn a foreign language, or like write the great American novel, or
learn to play the guitar.
Right. I mean, if you can and you want to, God bless, but this is not the expectation. This is not a sabbatical, right? This is not a time to find a new part of yourself. Okay.
I think surviving and taking a shower and getting a walk in and getting some food and connecting with 1 or 2 people you care about is a well-balanced day and a mission accomplished. I also want people to understand that our ability to do things or not do things will kind of wax and wane. So there will be days where you are more focused and less anxious. And for some reason, you're thinking about COVID less and worrying about our government less, and take advantage of those days. It's a gift. Mother Nature, God, a good night's sleep gave you that gift. Take that gift, organize 3 closets, go for a walk, play a piece of music, listen to a piece of music. And then there's days where you're going to have nothing accomplished, and those days are normal too. There's an ebb and flow to our suffering, to our anxiety, and to our ability to extract peace. And also, don't be so scared about that ebb and flow. So sometimes when we have a couple of anxious days, we think, is this what it's going to be like for the next month, 2 months, 3 months? What if our lives are affected and changed for a year? Don't worry about that, because there's a cycle. So some days will be terrible, some days will be mediocre, and some days will actually be pretty good. And sometimes it changes by the hour.
Yeah, and sometimes when I'm having like those bad days, I just kind of call in sick and say, oh, today's a sick day. And I try to like enjoy the sick day, if that makes sense. And I just sort of, I have the luxury. Give myself permission to just, stay in bed or watch a movie or avoid something I was supposed to do. Not every day, but once in a while, and just not wallow in it, but allow myself to be in that moment and know that it's going to pass. I don't fight it. So that's been super helpful for me.
Yeah. I like that.
What about our kids? I mean, we don't want them on screens, but they need to be on screens, and they're on screens for school. And there's only so much emotional resource we have to share to engage with them 24 hours a day. I received a phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning from one of my children yesterday. It's going on all day long. And, we need a little bit of a break. And the screens are useful to them to engage with their friends, but how do we know if they're in their room too long? How do we know if they're not engaging enough with their peers or with us? What's normal? What's not normal? Is there a normal? What should we be looking for?
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends a little bit on the age of the child. So, clients have been asking me for advice, and I think, little elementary school age kids are different than adolescents and different than the college kids that are home. I'm still calling them kids, or, the young adults that are staying with their parents because they have an apartment in Brooklyn and they don't want to be there anymore. So if we're talking about younger kids, I think the idea is the same as the idea that we were prescribing to ourselves. You definitely want to have a structure, and kids need and are looking for some direction and some sort of organization from us. And they want some parameters and they want some predictability. And so parenting and structure needs to be both firm and flexible. And I think it's really important to chunk the day into a couple of pieces. So, there might be a morning and there might be a school time, and there might be kind of in between school and evening time and a nighttime. They have to be on their screens to do their work. And then I think that it would be really important to try to carve out, again, a very loose schedule where sometime in the middle of the day, they are off the screens, and especially younger kids, and are out either with us in central areas, or possibly outside if we have a backyard and the weather's nice, or, in the front yard. And then I would say we should give ourselves permission to allow them to return back to their screens in the evening, try to kind of load the screens out at night when they go watch a movie or play games or Zoom with their friends. And that will give us the much needed break as well, where we can kind of read a book or have a glass of wine or talk to our significant other. So ideally, they would have their educational screen time in the morning. Then there would be some time, maybe, I don't know, between like 2 and dinner, where we can get them to do something physical or interact with us or do a craft or do a puzzle or color or go outside. And then I think after dinner, we can give ourselves permission to allow them to have the screens back a little bit. Maybe congratulate them for a job well done. Like, you did a really great job attending to your work, and you helped me set the dishes, and you did a beautiful job eating. And thank you so much for cleaning up. And we made some progress on the puzzle. You can now go play Roblox or watch the movie. If you have a small child, I highly recommend the recent Trolls movie. And give ourselves permission to chill out, because I think we also have nothing left at night. And so that would be useful time for them to have a little bit of screens. And then ideally, bath, shower, a little bit of reading, and then off to bed they go. I guess that would be a schedule for the younger kids.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's sort of what I'm struggling with, is there's so little resources left for me and for my spouse and for my children. And I feel like any moment that I'm like not engaging fully, there's like this overwhelming guilt, like, oh, they're alone in their room, or, oh, they're like not doing what I want them to be doing. But realistically, I don't know that you can expect to be their playmate 24/7, but there is this guilt that they're not with their friends, and they're not. Is that normal? Is that what a lot of parents are experiencing?
Absolutely. I think it's completely normal. And again, I think that's a really interesting distinction between younger kids and older kids, because I can tell you that all the adolescents say to me that they are having too much family time, that they're feeling overparented, and they don't want to hang out with their parents. So the younger kids need us and want us because we're the people that can socialize with them and play with them and entertain them. The older kids are burnt out on us. They're really craving peer stimulation, and honestly, we can't replace it for them. And I think it's normal for teenagers to want to be away from us and to kind of have space and to be in their rooms. And I think we should give the adolescent kids, the teenagers kids, a little more leeway and allow them to take a break. They're actually really sick of us. They're not used to being with us so much, and they don't want to tell us about how their day went. And they want to come out and socialize on their terms, not on our terms. And I think when you're dealing with an older child, so somebody, let's say 14 to 20, I think those kids want less of us instead of more of us.
It's just, I'm spread out in the whole range. I have 8-year-olds. I have now you're testing me, almost 12-year-olds and 15-year-olds. The 15-year-old wants nothing to do with us. The 11-year-old goes back and forth. And then the 8-year-old is on my lap all day long. She never gets enough. The other two don't want anything. And you feel guilty about all of it.
You do. And in some ways, the little kids are most needy and struggling, but also we have more opportunity to kind of meet their needs because they kind of still will take it from us. My 8-year-old is consistently saying to me that she's having trouble sleeping because she's an athletic kid and she's doing a lot of sports and activities and her body's not getting enough stimulation. So we're doing jumping jacks, we're walking on the treadmill, we're biking around the neighborhood, but that's not the same as 2 hours of hockey and swimming and gymnastics and tennis and all the other stuff that she was doing. And she very openly says to me that she's lonely and she's sad and she misses her friends and that zooming has become boring and social distancing, rollerblading with 10 feet apart doesn't cut it. And she keeps saying that like every day is not so great. At the end of the night, she always says like, Mom, the day was not so great. And I validate it.
How do you not, this is my problem as a parent. Now we're having therapy in front of the whole town.
Yeah. Why not?
How do you not personalize that? And as a parent, how do you not feel responsible for filling that void? Because that's sort of what has been so overwhelming for me, is trying to figure out how to be everything to all the people living here.
Right.
And my dog, who is now on my lap on top of everything.
So that's the $1 million question, but I think it actually applies to parenting in general. When our kids bring their problems to us and their feelings, I think we want to fix it and we want to change it and we want to make it better, but that's not necessarily our job. And that's not necessarily most important to their health and development. Our job is to validate, echo, mirror, and have compassion for their feelings and not to fix it or take it away. We can't take away the pandemic.
It's interesting.
We can't take away. I'm sorry to interrupt
you again.
Are you there?
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, we had one of those bad nights with one of our kids, when it's really bad. And I was so tired that normally I try to fix it and make it better, but I couldn't do anything but just sit there and hold that kid and rub them back and just listen. And I feel like in some ways that was the best thing I could have done in that moment, which was great because I didn't have energy to do anything else. But I see what you're saying. There is value in just listening and not trying to fix the problem for them.
Not only is it valuable, it's extremely important for their development. If we spend our lives fixing their feelings and taking it away and fixing their problems, they actually grow up a little more brittle and a little more anxious than they otherwise would be. So teaching them to hold and honor their feelings and allowing them to resolve or fix those feelings themselves, whether it's boredom or sadness or disappointment, without going and rescuing them from those feelings. Like those are the predictors of kids who are resilient. And there's really good research that anxious parents can't tolerate their children's anxiety, or, sad parents can't tolerate their kids' distress. And so we try to repair it, but that actually might be damaging. So what you can teach your child is that it's okay to hang out and be with your feelings, because if we try to take them away, we're also modeling that the feeling is dangerous. It needs to be like washed and removed and gotten rid of. And that's not necessarily a good lesson. So resilience and flexibility is about being able to suffer and accepting the suffering and then having the suffering leave you. So I actually think that this pandemic, as horrific as it is, could potentially be a very valuable lesson to our children, more our older children than the younger kids, because for the first time in their life, they see the world suffering and they're not fixated on their own problems. And they really have to modulate and practice dealing with unpleasant feelings like boredom and irritability and isolation, and handling those emotions and getting through those emotions is going to build really good resilience and excellent skills for the future.
Sorry, someone in my house is not coping.
Case in point. No. They're expressing their emotions in a healthy and productive way.
Yeah, well, my brother's family has moved in here, so we have a lot of people living in this house, and there's a lot of different.
Yeah. You are frozen again. Yeah.
So I think Neeli has frozen. Oh no!
Okay. What did I miss? I think what what a lot of us are processing now is we're feeling a little bit like this is a routine, like this is becoming normal. I was laughing with a friend that it's almost like your second trimester of pregnancy when like you feel the most beautiful, really good. You're like, I can handle this. And you get like a little bit of a honeymoon period. I hope that's what people are starting to experience now, but we're getting a little itchy, right? And some of us are getting here faster. What do we do about the itchiness? What do we do about the sense of like, when is this going to end? How do we get into those loops sometimes where, you know, my friends and I will sit on a Zoom. We don't even talk. We just have like our head like this. We go, when is this going to be over? What do you do when you're feeling like, I don't know how long I can do this?
Well, the good news is we're all going to do it as long as it takes. You know, we'll be miserable. We'll be miserable doing it, but we will be effective and we'll be strategic and we will celebrate all our suffering and our sacrifices, hopefully when it's over. This is a marathon. You know, we're running a marathon and we're not sprinting. I think at first we were sprinting. So if you're doing the 400-meter dash, you kind of give it all you've got. You have this burst of energy and you run to the finish line as fast as possible. Running a marathon involves a very different set of skills. And when you're running, I've never run a marathon, by the way, but I hear when you're running a marathon, you have to adopt different strategies. Sometimes you're cramping. Sometimes you need to take a gel. Sometimes you need a break. And there's an ebb and flow to our energy level. I think that each week is different for all of us. And I think at first we were panicked and really scared about catching COVID. And then we kind of got into this rhythm of like, I can do this. Like, it's not so terrible. I figured out how to get food. It's nice to be home with my family. And then we're getting weary and exhausted and wondering, you know, how long it takes. I think that the best that we can do is share these emotions as you and I are doing right now, and maybe coming up with some small changes in our routines and chunking our life. One of the really important things that I talk to patients about is chunking things. So like if it feels overwhelming, figure out a way to make the next hour productive and figure out how to make the next day feel pretty good and kind of take it one day at a time, and to not expect to feel one way or another each day, and not to expect to feel worse and worse and worse and worse. Just sort of get used to this ebb and flow. So, I would imagine that sometime in the near future, there'll be some loosening of restrictions and we'll get some more guidance and direction. And I think we'll really welcome and appreciate and be nervous about whatever potential changes are coming. You know, I'm hearing from people in other countries when I talk to other psychologists in other countries that even when they lift the quarantine, people are now frozen in their anxiety and afraid to leave their house, and they don't know how to transition. So we're gonna be working on transitioning to the next stage. It's not going to be as easy as like, oh great, I'm going to open my doors and go for lunch with my neighbor. You there?
You said frozen, and then literally as you said frozen, I think you tipped it off. Right. You were saying how people feel frozen and stuck in. I feel like I'm starting to feel that a little bit, like, oh, what's it going to be like when we do leave? Am I going to have
the hard?
I'm going to be a little scared. I'm not used to all the interaction and the new.
You're going to be tired. Yeah. We're going to be tired. We're going to be nervous. People are going to be scared to leave. And people are going to have a hard time figuring out what's safe and what not, what's not safe. So I think we're excited about being let out. But I think when we're finally given a little direction or permission, I actually think it's going to be really challenging. And there might be like an interesting second wave of anxiety in people and people not knowing what to do. And some people are going to get stuck in their house and they're going to need help to kind of navigate and negotiate that.
So I think that what I hear you saying is, even though we're all having very different experiences in our homes, we have this universal way that our brain works and our bodies function. Yep. And we're feeling, for the most part, very similar physical symptoms that are totally normal, totally healthy, and to a great degree, they demonstrate that our bodies are sort of functioning the way they're supposed to. It means that they're protecting us, and we're aware of fear and we're aware of danger. So these are healthy responses, but we have to be aware when they become unhealthy or unmanageable. And when that happens, there are people like you, other professionals who are working throughout all this, and you can reach out to them online. And I think we'll once again list different resources available to people. Mm-hmm. And people should absolutely feel very comfortable doing that, because this is not a normal set of circumstances. You should always feel comfortable taking responsibility for your mental health, but even more so now. And we should all expect to experience a variety of emotions throughout the day, and they're all normal. And we should learn to sit with them and honor them and not judge them and not fight with them, and just be accepting to what washes over us. And this is it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Any parting final words of comfort or wisdom for us?
I mean, one of the things that I'm hearing a lot, from a couple of thoughts. So one of the things that I'm hearing from my patients and friends and family is that the people in your family are fluctuating on different emotional and psychological rhythms and different psychological schedules. And I think it's useful to understand that and think about that. So sometimes you want to talk and have a conversation, and your significant other is exhausted and they want to be really quiet and surly, and you don't want to take that personally. Or sometimes your kids want to tell you how they're doing, or you kind of say, hey, are you really disappointed that there's no prom or there's no graduation? And your kid says, it's fine, and you're not sure what to do about it. It doesn't mean that they're not going to want to talk about it later. It means that when you have available energy and you want to interact, the other person may not. And so we are all on different rhythms. You had talked about our different experiences. I loved, I think I read it in the Times, somebody said we're all in the same storm, but we're different boats. And I think each person in the boat is kind of in a different location. And so just appreciating and understanding that, not taking it personally, giving each other a lot of leeway and a lot of forgiveness. I think those are really...
In our home, we have that rule. Like if one of our kids says, we don't want to come to dinner, unless it's like something important, okay, we respect that they may need privacy. We respect that if somebody has a bad moment, they just need to apologize. There's no harboring of ill will. We try to let go of things really quickly, especially now, because we realize that we're all going to have bad moments, and we're all going to have bad moments at different times. So if we hold on to those bad moments too long, we're never going to have good ones. So that's been a big part of our house. Not personalizing other people's reactions and being respectful for people's needs to be alone and have their own quiet time, even if it's the moment that you want to be engaged with them.
There's also some really nice, healthy, positive things that we can do. So, I talked earlier about not watching too much news and not watching news before you go to sleep. There are news outlets that talk about good news and positive news and developments and science and all these countries sharing really interesting information. Go and seek out positive news about COVID. Go read about recovered people, watch the videos when they clap out for people who leave the hospital. Our brains are designed to look for dangerous information and to seek out negative information, because biologically and evolutionarily, that process protects us from danger. So I think we have to go out and seek the good news, because otherwise our brains are always going to focus on the bad news, and then it's going to feel like it's never over and it stinks and there's terrible things going on. So I would say find some outlets and read some cool stuff. Read some good research about progress on vaccines or interesting new medications or stem cells or what they're doing in France or what they're doing in Israel. Look for the good news and find the good news to be inspired. And the other thing I think that's really useful to do is let's begin to plan our future. Let's talk about all the things that we miss, and let's make a list of things that we will do and look forward to when it's safe, and how much we will savor and enjoy them. So like plan your next sushi meal and how you're going to, or your dinner at an outdoor restaurant, and think about how much fun it'll be to like actually clink your glass of wine with your dear friend, or fantasize about a trip you're going to take. Maybe we won't take that trip in 2020. Maybe we'll take that trip in 2021 or 22. But we have to start creating and fantasizing and looking forward to and designing our future so that we don't feel like it's never going to be over. It's going to be over. We're going to be happier, and we're going to be healthier, and we're going to do some wonderful things. And there are some beautiful lessons that we are learning, hopefully, through this pain. And there's always a necessity to find a silver lining or a benefit when we go through a hardship. And so let's do that. But let's plan, let's think about the good stuff. Let's fantasize about all the fun things we're going to be doing. And let's talk about how delicious it's going to be and how much we're going to savor it and how great it's going to be. Like, oh, one more really important thing I want to talk about.
Yes.
We are animals, and we are mammals, and we are social. We are social animals, and we crave and need touch and physical stimulation from other people. There was some funny research that in order to be healthy, you need to hug like 14 people a day. We are not hugging and kissing and touching people like we normally are. So we high five our friends, we hug and kiss our friends, we see our cousins, our parents, our grandparents, little kids hug their teachers. I, hug some of my kid patients. Make sure you're getting enough touch, and force your family to give you hugs and kisses, and force them to accept them from you, because we are deprived of physical stimulation that we would be giving each other, because our worlds are so small, and so we only have our family. And so grab your family, hold them hostage, and create some endorphins and oxytocin and touch them. Tell them it's medicine. Those are my parting words.
And thank you. I thank you for your time. I thank you for sharing your insight with us. I think we're going to call you back if you'll give me another chance to do this the right way without these interruptions. I apologize. Of course, it happens today.
Maybe we can plan our release. Maybe we can kind of plan on, kind of how to readjust and integrate. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to talking about adjusting and integrating.
Me too.
But thank you so much for the time, sharing your insights with all of us. I know this is something that is now on the forefront of what we're thinking about. And to everyone at home, we're going to post some resources available to you if you think that you need a little bit more help managing some of the anxiety and some of the feelings, the emotions that you're experiencing. And I wanted to thank all of you for joining us today. Thank you to Robert and Holly, and of course to Julia. And everyone, stay safe, be well, take care of your bodies, but also take care of your minds. I think that's going to be the next challenge here, is how we take care of our minds, how we keep ourselves in optimal mental health, so that we can continue to stay put. All we have to do is stay put. And if we stay put, okay, but that's a little bit more difficult than is just said. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
And thank you. Take care.
Stay safe and healthy, everyone.
You too. Stay safe and healthy. Bye.